And it was an awkward interview, wasn't it? I mean, he was questioned about the royal family and he said this.
An illness in the family can have a galvanizing or sort of reunifying effect for a family.
Absolutely.
Is that possible in this case?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, throughout all these families, I see it on a day-to-day basis. The strength of the family unit coming together.
But Esther, then he also said this.
Just physically being in California, how have you processed the fact that there's so much happening back with your family where you come from?
I have my own family,
right?
So as we all do, yeah. Right? So, my family and my life in California is as it is.
It doesn't appear that he's really clear about his priorities. Does he know what he actually wants?
Well, I mean, you could see throughout the course of that interview, and it was not a very long interview, it was only about 4 minutes, he did try and keep drawing it back to obviously the Invictus Games, which is why he was even in Canada in the first place. So he didn't try and give too much away on the family front. I mean, he did kind of say the generic, I love my family and all of that. But actually, I think he knows that anything he does say can and will be scrutinized quite critically. You know, for him to say, I love my family, again, his actions over the last few years might suggest otherwise. I think is something that he is cognizant of. And I think obviously the main priority is the fact that he didn't reveal King Charles's diagnosis, because I can tell you when I saw the spread on the Daily Mail saying Harry is going to give an interview with Good Morning America about King Charles's condition, I just thought, Harry, I'm having breakfast. This is not the time to give the country a mini heart attack. But thankfully, he showed some decorum, which is not something that he's been known for recently. But at the end of the day, he did try and focus on the Invictus Games in that interview. He was actually quite slick in some ways. He didn't get suckered in too much into really revealing too much about the nature of his meeting with King Charles when he flew over to the UK or anything like that. But yeah, of course, anything that he does will raise eyebrows because he's kind of put himself into disrepute over the last few years.
And that takes me to my next point. You know, this idea has since been floated about him returning to royal duties temporarily while the king is out of action. That hasn't been too well received, has it?
It hasn't been, and it's highly, highly unlikely. I mean, alongside probably, you know, Prince Andrew's and a long list of deplorables in the past, Prince Harry is probably one of the most disliked men in Britain. He's still technically a councillor of state, but since he's not an active working royal alongside Prince Andrew, he will not be called up to take on any duties. And this is something that the palace has probably made clear, that it would be very unlikely, especially given the influence that William will have. William will inherit his father's role. I suspect he feels a sense of duty to actually just keeping the royal family and the monarchy in a place that's not just, you know, just a gossip fest, basically. And so I think that the royal family knows that it wouldn't go down too well with the British public. They're not tone deaf. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the institution has survived for as long as it has. You know, public opinion does matter. But it doesn't surprise me that there are these allegations that Prince Harry would be happy to step in. You have to remember when he and Meghan decided to step back from being active members of the royal family, they actually wanted to have sort of a hybrid working model. So have a life in North America where they could have some sort of privacy, but also undertake duties on behalf of the monarch as and when they could. And this was a proposal that was firmly rejected. You know, you can't have one foot in and one foot out. And so in many ways they felt forced out. So I'm not surprised that that's an idea that Prince Harry would be completely against. But at the end of the day, you know, the status quo has calcified. There's too much that has happened. Prince Harry will not be received well, and neither will his wife, who I'm assuming most people probably liken her to Yoko Ono in many ways. So it's not something that would happen, absolutely not. And Prince William would certainly not let it happen.
Now, we know that Harry recently met with King Charles, obviously after the King's cancer diagnosis. Now, it's been reported this week that he demanded to see the King alone. What was that all about?
So the Queen's friend and journalist Petronella Wyatt apparently alleged that Prince Harry wanted a private audience with his father. Now, of course, he's perfectly entitled to that. He did fly all the way to the UK to see his father specifically, and I'm not surprised that he probably didn't want to waste any of his time having kind of cordial chit-chat with his stepmother, who he addresses in quite a scathing manner in his book Spare. I suspect the relationship isn't very good in that way either. So I'm not surprised that he didn't want to have her in the room. But you know, it's one of those things. It was a private father-son moment. Again, I'm still surprised that he hasn't revealed any details of that. This is a man who has been tailed by Netflix cameras, who's clearly made a point of exposing his life in the most, in my opinion, unappealing and vulgar manner. So I don't really know where this kind of tight-lipped nature is coming from. But I'm not surprised that the Prince Harry didn't want to speak to the Queen. He did have to fly back quite quickly. I think he only spent about 30 minutes speaking with his father. He had to fly back to Las Vegas for an NFL award ceremony. Again, something that I just thought, good Lord, to see a senior member of the royal family reduced to having to prostitute himself at these kinds of events is quite disgraceful, but you know, that's how he's making a living now.